Small business owners answered the challenges brought by the pandemic with a spirit of reinvention. Here to speak to this and the future of small business is Kerrigan, the president and CEO of the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council. Karen, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Bob.
Well, as you know, Karen, in the beginning of every year, the president addresses Congress and the nation, and he gives his State of the Union address. I'd like you to kind of give what you think the state of small business is, especially in the wake of the pandemic.
Well, they're challenged. They certainly have grinded it out, over the last 3 years or so. And, but they're resilient, they're tough, they've pivoted, they've used a lot of the technologies that are out there in order to drive revenues and to compete in a very challenging environment. But they are still challenged by headwinds, Bob, in terms of their revenues being pinched, higher costs, and in fact, not even being able to operate up to full capacity. According to a recent Wall Street Journal Vistage survey, 55% of business owners said they weren't able to operate at full capacity. So, this all has an impact on their bottom line, their ability to compete, and their survivability moving forward. So, on the one hand, there's challenges, but on the other hand, Bob, we're also seeing a lot more people filing business applications and wanting to be a business owner. So, there's a lot of good things ahead for our economy, if policies again, enable this type of entrepreneurial activity and also support the small businesses that are out there.
Karen, you're always talking to small business owners across the country, I'm sure. What do you hear that you think Washington policymakers should hear?
Well, the first thing you want policymakers in Congress and the administration to do is to listen to them and give them a voice. And they'll be the first ones to tell them what they need to do. And so they want relief. Certainly they want policies that are not going to burden them with more costs or more regulation. When you look at their policy priorities, whether it's startups, all the pandemic startups that we surveyed, or even existing small businesses that have been around for quite some time, it comes down to the basic and the fundamentals: tax simplicity, tax relief, smart, regulation, affordable health coverage, access to capital, just sort of access to markets, access to labor, sort of the foundational pieces that they need to grow their business and compete in the modern economy. Moreover, there's some great models, that have really worked well in our country, Bob, in terms of paths to entrepreneurship and new business creation. The franchise model, independent contractors, self-employment, our M&A system. These have all been very critical for the whole startup ecosystem, for the business ecosystem, and they want policymakers to do no harm to these very successful models. So there's things happening right now in the regulatory agencies and up on the Hill, that would harm these models. And again, models that have worked very well in terms of building wealth and creating a very vibrant, competitive economy.
Where have you seen small businesses come over the last 5 years, especially with e-commerce and getting online, especially during the pandemic? It was essential for some businesses.
Well, essential. And, the surveys that we've done of not only startups, but existing business owners said that if it wasn't for digital tools, digital platforms, all the modern tools, that are out there, they would not have survived, the COVID economy. And certainly, all these tools have been utilized and embedded across their businesses in order to operate more efficiently and to cut costs and to do things, that they need to be doing in order to survive a very challenging economy. So, but it's very interesting, again, we're looking at another wave of disruption that's going to be upon us in terms of Web Web 3.0 technologies, the metaverse, all these exciting things that are ahead of us. And that's just going to open up more avenues for entrepreneurship and new businesses, new products and services. So it is an exciting time. And I think the important thing is we need just a very stable and smart policy environment in order to, again, in order to encourage existing business, but also to encourage future investment and innovation that's going to bring all these new technologies and tools to market, not only for small businesses, but for consumers and workers throughout our country, if not the world.
What do you think the new House coming in January, be narrow majority led by the GOP? Are you looking for a more active, whether it's small business committee or other committees, to do more oversight on regulations? Because we haven't seen a lot of that in this Congress.
Well, I think oversight is critical. I mean, certainly, in terms of the regulatory agencies that we think are working overtime and are doing things that are not too helpful for small businesses and our small business economy. So I think oversight is essential at all the agencies, from the DOL to Treasury, the Internal Revenue Service, certainly the Federal Trade Commission that's doing a lot, to what we think disrupt in a bad way the M&A ecosystem, which really will hurt our startup ecosystem, which has been the gem of the world. So definitely oversight is critically important. And we think whatever Congress, if it's run by Democrats or Republicans, should always be doing a lot of oversight. So that is a priority for us, I think. But we would like to see some bipartisan action. There's a lot of consensus on issues and on the priorities of small businesses that we think we could get through this House and get through the Senate. Issues such as capital formation, affordable health coverage choices, possibly some regulatory relief, maybe even some tax reform and permanency, of some of the tax provisions that will expire as part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that have been helpful for small businesses. Yes, oversight is important, and we're going to be cheering that on. But we are also going to be looking for opportunities to advance legislation that we can also get through the Senate and hopefully to the president's desk.
Congress has taken some remedies on the supply chain shortages that we've seen during the pandemic. What are you hearing across the country? Does Congress need to do a lot more in this area, or is what they passed already, you think, is going to be enough?
Well, I certainly think they can be doing more, but sometimes doing more is doing less. So, we think that, the private sector, is the key to resolving our supply chain issues. And that if we just let the private sector does what it does best, and there's policy stability from a tax and regulatory perspective, that's going to drive the investment and going to drive the business activity that we need in order to resolve, the supply chain mess. So it all comes back to incentivizing, the private sector, small, mid-sized, large businesses, the entire business ecosystem, that can develop solutions and, keep on investing so that we do not have any of these supply chain, issues moving forward in 2023. It certainly has gotten better, Bob, but that just might be because the economy has cooled and demand is not as high as it was. But we need to be forward thinking in policy, and that means, supercharging our private sector to invest and, again, to do what it does best to help us get to make sure the supply chain mess or chaos does not happen again.
Are you confident, because we're in such polarizing times? You mentioned some of the solution can be a combination of things, including tax law and extending pieces of tax law that's already been made, like the Trump tax. Now, obviously, Democrats don't like that bill or that law, but they want other things. Do you think that we're in a situation with divided government that that maybe, just maybe, there's actually going to be more bipartisanship in the new year than is anticipated, and the the expectation is very little.
Bob, I think the margins are slim on both sides, of the Capitol, right? Both in the House and the Senate. And then we have another election, that's going to happen, in 2 more years. So I think politically, there should be some incentive for both sides of the aisle to get things done. And I've been at this for almost 30 years now, and I'm an eternal optimist. And, we've been able to get through legislation, really good pieces of legislation for small business in Democrat administrations and Republican administrations. And, we did have a mix of political power in the Congress. So I am optimistic, and I just hope that, members do the right thing and do what's best for our economy and for the business sector. And again, not play a lot of political games, because too much is at stake for our economy and U.S. leadership across the globe.
There certainly is a lot at stake. Karen Kerrigan, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Bob. It was great to be with you today.